Welcome to our presentation, Doubling Sales by Trimming Your Salesforce. If you think selling is harder than it used to be, you're right. If you're looking for someone to blame the internet. Sell is now a four-letter word. Today's buyers are so used to an abundance of information that they want to self-sell, not be sold by a salesperson. I'll give you an example. Pretend you're buying a car today versus buying a car in 1985. Back in the good old days when you could sell, you had to walk into a car dealership just to get any information on the car aside from a few trade magazines. You had to walk into the dealer, expose yourself as a buyer, raise your hand and say, "Please, may I have some information on this automobile?" Contrast that to today. You can do all kinds of research on the internet. You can even get close to a final buying decision without ever setting foot in the dealership, and more importantly, without the dealer ever knowing you're a prospect. Unfortunately, the internet has permanently changed buyer psychology. You have to deal with generational preferences like young kids want to use social media to communicate, and baby boomers want to use the telephone, and Generation Xers like to use email, and somewhere in between there, they like to use text. Buyers are so used to hiding behind the internet. We've all done it. We've all gone to a web page. They try to squeeze your email out of you with some kind of a magnet item, and you don't think that the item is worth your email, and so you hit the X button, and that is hiding. Buyers prefer to remain anonymous, and our trick as salespeople is to get them not to remain anonymous. People prefer self-education versus sell. Sell's a four-letter word to the younger generation, and even older folks that are over 30 say don't want to be sold. They prefer to self-educate, and we all have developed this incredible ADD and short attention span. Corporate buyers are a whole separate entity, and they have incredibly tight deadlines, demands, attention spans. Voicemail doesn't work, and you can't get through their gatekeepers because they've made them better, and the big shots don't attend trade shows anymore, so you can't get in front of them, and the RFP process is rigged in the favor of the person that helped get it. So how do we get in front of our actual buyers if we're selling to these people? What this means to you and me is that what we always have called sales or selling is now an overpriced legacy system. I want to show you one way that illustrates the point, and it's the cost of a salesperson generated lead. You can download the exercise on the course materials and see it for yourself. Whether you do the exercise or not, here's what you're going to discover. The cost of a salesperson generating a true lead for your business is a lot more expensive than you think, and there's better and cheaper ways to do it. As you can see in this exercise, these are two real-life examples, and we asked these companies what they thought it cost to generate a lead, and they both said around $100, maybe $200. And you can see that example one has pretty high margin but low sales value. Example two, lower margin but higher sales value. And by the time that you take away all the leads that the salesperson really didn't generate, like say a trade show, or the ones that come to the company naturally, it's more like $400 in one example and $700 in another example of what you're paying a salesperson to generate a lead. The point being, there's better and cheaper ways to do it than paying a human. Okay, enough with the problem. Let's get into the good stuff. Let's talk about how to fix this issue. Here's the underlying premise in this entire presentation, and that is that the legacy cost of salespeople, human beings, has gotten way too expensive in some areas and underemphasized in others, and that we need to shift the expense structure away from people cost and towards technology cost. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to sell to buyers the way they want to be sold. The good news is it's cheaper to do it that way. Second, we're going to use technology first and people second. It's not that people can be removed from the sales process, but they can be de-emphasized, and we could save money doing so. We're going to save money by virtualizing portions of the sales process so that we can deliver information and education to prospects in the way they want it, when they want it, how they want it. We're going to do that primarily through education-based marketing and a trick that we like to call disintegrating the sales process. A simple example of this, voicemail. What voicemail did was eliminate the need to talk to somebody live, and you could still move the process forward by breaking it into two pieces. I leave you a voicemail, you call back, leave me a voicemail, or talk to me live. You can do this through, we're seeing people use quick YouTube messages where they will literally use their webcam and say, hey Tony, I wanted to let you know I've got your proposal done, I'm going to be sending it over in 2 days, etc., etc. 1-minute videos on YouTube. Or breaking what used to be a 30-minute PowerPoint into 9 pieces and sending it via email or Twitter or other chunks. Buyers just don't have the attention span, and we've got to break the sales process into more pieces in order to get it done. We'll break this into pieces using a model that we call the Solomon's Sales Solution. You may not be able to cut a baby in half, but you can cut the sales process into 3 distinct and discrete pieces. First, we generate a lead, and that is someone that says, hey, I might be interested in what you've got. Then we nurture that lead to sales readiness. Then we pass it along to the skilled salespeople, and they play Monty Hall and make a deal. And now we've got what used to be called selling. Most companies have a significant opportunity to increase lead generation. However, in order to do that, you need to tap more sources. The old sources where we just did direct mail, a little telemarketing, a few trade shows, some networking, etc. There's a dozen, 20 lead sources that successful companies are using now. We want to make that less people dependent. We want SEO leads, web leads, leads that are not people dependent. If possible, we still can get people dependent leads, just not as reliant upon them because they're so expensive, and we're going to leverage the web a lot more. Now, when that lead goes into lead nurturing, this is where the real cost savings typically exist, because that change in buyer psychology wants information, and to self-sell, we could very easily deliver that via the web, which allows us to cut a lot of cost. And then importantly, we use lead scoring. That whether we're using a piece of software like Marketo or a crude system we make ourselves, we must lead score, because a lead score tells us when it goes from keep nurturing and informing them to it's time to call in the Salesforce. And so when we get into the Salesforce, that's where it gets very interesting. And now we need to make an investment, probably a heavier investment for most of you, in better closers. I want to go through an exercise to show you the cost of a bad salesperson. Usually this will blow people's mind. So if you look at column A, we've got an average deal size of 50 grand, 40% profit, and a weak salesperson that closes 30%, and a good salesperson that closes 50%. Bottom line, it's $110,000 lost even after salary of the bad salesperson. They're literally taking $110,000 off the bottom line. That's not even the bad one. Let's take a $100,000 average sale with a 50% profit. The weak salesperson closes 50, the best closes 60. Not much of a difference, but because of the deal size and the profit, even after the salary savings of the bad salesperson, over $500,000 cost to the organization of giving a good lead to a bad salesperson. That is the most expensive mistake in business. If we're going to make this process work, we must close all closable deals. All right, let's get into the fix for this. What do we do to generate more leads? Well, the best systems allow for self-selling and self-lead generation. So if you think about buying a car or Travelocity, where you book your own travel, what they've done is they've taken the work away from their own staff that they had to pay, let you pay your own travel agent or be your own car salesperson, but provided you a robust web experience or online experience in order to self-service. So we need to shift our thinking away from how do we get a salesperson to generate a lead to how do we get the web to generate a lead. And if we go back to how much it costs us to have a human being generate a lead, we have a ton of money to invest in these digital methodologies. And we'll need to take that money and invest it in the digital methodologies because they can be fine-tuned through A/B testing, etc. We're going to need to create some items like quizzes, assessments, lead magnets, or freebies. You've seen these. One of the best ones, go to HubSpot's website grader. That has generated well over 1 million leads for HubSpot because they are giving away valuable content. Now, the conventional wisdom and the gurus will tell you that a lead magnet needs to have between $50 and $100 of perceived value. The days of giving away a lousy white paper or something cheesy are gone. You will not catch leads with a bad lead magnet. We are better off to overinvest, as HubSpot did, in a product that may be worth several $100s because you get leads from it. The other thing that we can do is content marketing. There's all kinds of content marketing. This is how we do search engine marketing. We put up content. We can promote content. There's lots of ways, from guest blogging to paid posts to text links embedded in other articles. There's all kinds of ways to drive people to your content. But the key on this is it needs to be good. And most of us need to improve the quality of our content, in particular, the educational value. At this point, we're just trying to get someone to raise their hand and say, hey, I might be interested in what you've got. No one wants to be sold at this point. They just want to be educated. Pure, unadulterated education. In the area of lead nurturing, the key to this is lead scoring. And whether we use a computer-based lead scoring system, everyone needs to go through the exercise of lead scoring. I've seen this be one of the most powerful exercises a business can do, because if you say, how do we determine whether someone is a suspect, a prospect, ready to close, or continues to need to be nurtured, will determine how we sell. That what it can do is it can change your sales process. Now, this is a whole different presentation. I recommend you go to Marketo.com, has some great PowerPoints and information on what lead scoring is, but the short version is it not only scores demographic information, are you the right person, is your company the right size, etc., but it scores activity more. Did they open the white paper you sent? Are they opening your emails? Did they take the next step in your process? People that take action moving towards the close are better prospects than one that look good on paper demographically. That's the key to lead scoring. And so when we determine what those actions are and how we're going to score it, what we do is we find we have holes in our sales process, and then we can fix them, in particular when we're trying to create a digital process. Ideally, you'd love to have something that will track web activity, and I'm not talking about Google Analytics. I am talking about something like HubSpot that can tell that I went to your web page, I stayed on this page for 3 minutes, then I went to these other pages, because effectively they're in your digital store. And you want to know who is browsing and who is not. And without a web tracking system, it's really difficult to identify where the leads are coming from. There's an interesting set of data that's out now, and a lot of companies that have resources are going to pushing these leads to salespeople immediately. And the conventional wisdom is that if someone is on your web browsing around in a way that is meaningful, i.e. a lead, a salesperson should call them within minutes to get the best results. These are sophisticated systems that a lot of us don't have, but this is what's working for bigger companies. Third, we need to educate, not sell. I can't emphasize this enough. You have to give valuable information, and the good news is you've got a lot of it. You've got a lot of information the customer needs to self-educate, so be generous. Share it. Do not be afraid to give up your best information, because we're moving the prospect along by doing so. A lot of people feel like they can't share this great information because then the customer or prospect won't need them. It's actually the other way around. If you don't give it to them, they're going to find somebody that will give it to them. What we will need to make the lead nurturing process work is we're going to need content, and a lot of it. Most people don't have anywhere near enough. We'll need something along the lines of an autoresponder to where if someone opts into something, we can send them a series of 5, 10, 20 year-long drip campaigns to get them interested in buying and paying attention through web tracking as to when they poke their head out of the bushes. And then we'll need some form of a lead scoring system built into that as well. There's a lot of opportunities in the third piece of our Solomon process, closing. The first is to eliminate the most expensive mistake in business, giving a good lead to a bad salesperson. Our goal is every closable deal, and they're not all closable, but every closable deal needs to be closed because we have this great investment. So your close rate should go up, because what we're going to do is take people that don't close well and get them out of the closing step. We'll move them into lead nurturing or lead generation, but what you find is most salespeople are only good at one of these 3 Solomon steps. They're either a good lead generator, maybe they're a good closer, they may be a good lead nurturer, but they're not a good closer. That's very common. And you find when you get these killer closers, they're usually not good at anything else. And they're probably driving you nuts. But we need these people. These are the rock stars of the Solomon sales world because they don't lose deals. And we've got all this big investment in getting a lead and nurturing it. Now we need to close them all. So your closing rate should go up because of lead scoring in particular and having better salespeople. And if it isn't, there's something wrong with our lead nurturing most likely. Let's use a case study of a company that used the Solomon sales solution and sales virtualization to increase their sales. A little background, so this company sells software to small municipalities in about a 13-state area in the Midwest. They had 9 salespeople calling on people like sheriffs and county managers and EMS directors that were high-level operatives at these counties or cities. 8 of the 9 salespeople basically weren't all that good. They had one person that was really rocking it. The rest of them all were selling $200,000, $80,000, $300,000, not enough to really matter. But the top person was doing $850,000. They did not have a sales manager, and they had virtually zero internet lead generation, despite the fact that there was a decent amount of traffic. Now, they viewed the problem as a billion-dollar competitor that had monopolized all the search traffic, but I assure you there's always long tail stuff that the big companies have not got to. Here was the owner's debate in this situation. He felt that if you took these underperforming salespeople off the street, dropping in on sheriffs, etc., how would he get any sales? It was I know they're not that good, but having them is better than not having them. And eventually it got bad enough that we got him to bite the bullet and make the shift. Here's the short version of the changes that we made to cut costs and increase sales. The first thing we did was cut the sales force basically in half. That we had some people quit. We didn't replace them. We moved one of the people into what we call a sales coordinator, and this is a big deal. What a sales coordinator does is she or he runs the salespeople. They either telemarket for appointments, they set the appointments, and they follow up. That the sales coordinator actually owned the customer, not the salesperson. That was a little bit of a tough sell, but when your sales force isn't performing, it's an easier sale, meaning we said, you don't own these customers anymore, salesperson. The sales coordinator is in control. You still get your commission. Everything still stays the same. But now with the sales coordinator in control, guess what? they have to go on more appointments. So the number of appointments more than doubled because the sales coordinator is setting them for them and making sure that they go on enough, so no more slacking off. The sales coordinator also isn't big on excuses because, in this case it was a she didn't have to live it. So that segmentation of labor was huge. We also banned drop-in appointments. The salespeople were always saying, the bad ones were always saying, oh, well, it's hard to get to these people. We just have to drop in. Well, once we ran the cost and said, you do realize that buying that share up a cup of coffee costs $250, there's probably a better way to do it. The owner was more than happy to figure out a way to do that. And so what we did was do some telemarketing, do some search engine marketing, do a LinkedIn group. Believe it or not, this was a thirsty community for information because it was high tech. So we had lots of information that they wanted. We created a bunch of videos and some sizzle reels and made a LinkedIn group and did a marketing strategy on LinkedIn that actually generated appointments, and lastly, implemented a lead scoring system so that we knew when it was the appropriate time to go and see the prospect, but not before. We did a webinar first, that we gauged people's interest based upon whether they would attend a live webinar, which added a ton of leverage because now we're spending 20 minutes with a prospect over the web versus dropping in, driving around 13 states to do so, paying for cars, etc. And only once we knew that someone had a sincere level of interest and a budget and did we move them to the next step in the process. Here's what the results were from all of these changes, which, by the way, don't happen overnight. These take 6 months to a year. But the average sales per sales rep went up to over $600,000. No more bad sales reps. And because of that, the average salesperson pay increased. So this creates a positive spiral, meaning no one sells well, so we can't afford good salespeople and good closers, but if we have the lead generation and nurturing process, now we can give better leads to better salespeople and pay them better and demand that they close better. As a result, the prospect pipeline got significantly bigger, in particular when you measured quality of the pipeline. Before, there was a bunch of junk in it because no one wants to tell their boss they have a bad pipeline. So now, in a very measurable and discernible fashion, the quality of the pipeline doubled. Closed business, 24% increase. Total cost of sales, the total sales activities, down 31%, even with the new expenses that we brought on and higher sales pay. Total sales cost down 31%. The primary reason, eliminating salespeople that weren't getting it done, replacing it with sales coordination and web leads and virtualization of call number one. All of that is significantly less expensive than sending a human being to go buy cups of coffee or to schmooze a sheriff or an EMS director. Right now, you may be saying, yeah, but I don't sell software, or yeah, that doesn't apply to me. Okay, some of it doesn't apply to you, but a lot of it does. So here's the action plan for getting this implemented at your company. First, we're going to find legacy cost. Where is the waste in the system? And there is, because it just happens. It's not anybody's fault. It's just time marching on that creates that. So there's a downloadable worksheet that will give you some help in some areas and categorization to help you find those legacy costs and add up what you can save. Then there's another worksheet on how to replace those costs. So we're going to reduce and eliminate them first, just like in the case of the software. We didn't get rid of all the salespeople. We let some attrition, but we ended up cutting the size of the people in half, redeploying that into different positions and technology. Same thing that you'll do. How can we reduce, eliminate, or shift those costs? Then we take that savings and we reinvest it in content creation, technology, whether that be web tracking or things or CRM, and better closers. That's where the money goes that we save, and we do have a worksheet on how to do that, and again, some hints on where you can place that money. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Please don't hesitate to call us with questions, comments, or concern. We're happy to help in any way to get this process implemented for you.